So anyway, I told you about the visitation at Cave Lake, right? About how the little greys and the big greys were all dancing around the tent and using neural synaptic connection with their instinctive tribal sounds, because they are reptilian after all. Well, cloned now, but still they were base reptilian. After all, they were from the late Jurassic era, because they are Terran, after all, or whatever they called it. Well, I never told you what happened after they unzipped the tent and the adult Grey stuck his head in and I blacked out. What really happened was that there was a level of communication there. And in this communication, I learned all about the Slee Stacks. Yes, the Slee Stacks. See, because these races have been contacting us for so long now that they're in our selective memory. Especially since they've been genetically inbreeding with us to make us a hybrid race. It's true, you know. Basically, we would have been a much smaller, pygmy-type race that had no inclinations of getting taller and bigger and much more intelligent. So that's why you see all this in the science fiction, is because it's inherent genetic memory. And what I gleaned from the neurosynaptic from the mind meld, right, was that of their history and what their social progressive values were. Being a tribal society is very much liberal and sort of communist, but in the same way very class hierarchical also, because while the little ones are prepubescent, they are much more mature than children, which are more, or they're a different stage too. They're more nurturers and stuff. They're little beldings, you know. They're more animals that when they gain adulthood, gain intelligence, but they're still prepubescent. It's the more seniors that become sexually active, and the tall greys, see. And all this is partly biomechanical too, because they are cybergenic. And that means that since they can clone themselves and genetically change themselves in any way, they are kind of synthetic race, but a self-synthetic race. They haven't been created by someone, they've been created by themselves, and are kind of like a biological version of the Borg, but bioneural in the fact that they can incorporate some of their technology into bioneural circuitry that has some of the effects of advanced particle physics. They can do some things that, of course, we can't, because while it's pure science, it's very science fiction-like, because it can use neurosynaptic technology and various particle wave energy emissions and generators from various places to actually influence things, such as like things that we would consider psychic, you know, like mind communication, which is more like an extension of their tribal pack mentality, you know, whistles and snorts and various sounds and postures of that kind of pack thought, which is kind of a hive mind, which is kind of what they instill in us, but we're not completely compatible as a species, you see. So this is some of the things I gleaned. Now, about interstellar travel. See, we've made various mistakes in thinking about interstellar travel of, if someone could visit us. It's not true. Well, there might have been somebody visiting us, but we're kind of a claimed territory. And the only reason somebody would ever really visit us is to actually view our culture. That's why the UFOs fly by, is because they like to see, what's happening in the human habitat. Could you imagine an alien watching some of our news or television programmings? They're not here for conquest. They're not here for resources. Once you've, gained a foothold into space, you first gain the access to all the materials you need in your solar system and an almost inexhaustible supply of energy from your sun. The Earth, for example, only collects I forgot the infinitesimal percentage of energy that the sun puts out. Now imagine if you had an energy source that you could use in instrumentation and vehicles to get in and out of your gravity well, and had the ability to harness other resources for materials you would need for space. Your breathing and, other things you would need for living in space and other infrastructure needs. If you had Star Trek's impulse drive, you wouldn't need anything else. If you could have something that could stop and start on a dime and get up to 0.86 light years speed, just short of relativistic, I just can't say that right now. Relativistic. Oh well. Near light speed. Okay, how about that? If you could get something that could get that, you could quickly harness the materials from asteroid cloud, take it over, and probably have machines do this. Assemble power stations that could shoot high energy lasers or whatever electromagnetic or whatever source of energy you would have out into space, use that to power your craft, and have a large supply of energy nevertheless. And you wouldn't need to send people into space or have to worry about it getting there within somebody's lifetime or a reasonable fraction within it, because what you would have is several probes that would send a supercomputer, that's a very small thing, right, to where you wanted to be, that if you even needed to, would manufacture a clone that you could download information in. If you needed a live worker, you probably wouldn't even need that. You could just have a synthetic mind, that could be processed. Or even just a biometric machine, that could do anything you want it to do. And that would work just fine. So you see, it becomes almost pointless to be a little green man in a UFO. And considering that they're from here anyway, and they don't even need bodies, except for the fact that they need to be an aspect of self and not completely lost in the machine. They, so to speak, do a, what do they call that when you go into freaking Australia? A great walkabout, still walking on the soil. They take the kiddies out and freaking have them run around the tent while the freaking humans sit there and go, oh, it's like going out and freaking poking at the freaking monkeys, They're the Jane Goodalls of freaking, of aliens, except they're not the aliens, they're the freaking Greys, They're the Slee Stacks. So that's the whole mystery of the UFO thing right there, is that there was a preformed civilization. Now, Carl Sagan once said, I don't believe that we've had visitation or there was any ancient societies of technological origin because there would be artifacts. Now, that's hard to deny, but if it was several million years ago, what would be left, And if you had a race that cultivated a planet to let a new species come aboard, and it had things like tricorders and stuff, which is like subatomic radar for atomic structure, where you could just go through and scan something, this has 84% gold, there's a clump of carbon, carbon, pottery, clay, and something over here. Oh, the computer has identified it as an artifact. Okay, well, we'll just freaking scramble the freaking atoms of that, or take it out, or whatever, however you want to picture that, I mean, imagine limited Star Trek and put in some real physics and some slight subatomic manipulation, and you basically got it's like the theory of everything. If you had the theory of everything where you could control at medium temperature range effects, the forces of nature, in other words, you didn't have to have a black hole condition to alter gravity or light, if you could do that, then you could actually do many of the things that have been accounted for in UFO stories in the past, and in the current day, like communion and all that stuff, Whitney Schreiber, communion, Close Encounters, all those kind of things, take the Spielberg out of it and stuff, and basically, that's what you would get. And interestingly, the traditional UFO was never a disc. What it was that it was a moon crescent, and that was basically like a jet, or a flying wing, so to speak. And now that is an aerodynamic form, because it has a round curvature wing and it has a back tail. That could have been the basis for an early jet. Now, if you have the ability to control thrust and gravity and inertia, well, all you have to worry about is aerodynamics. And that might retard the need for advanced materials that would actually heat up leading edges of a vehicle going at Mach speeds or faster, And of course, I never believed for a moment